let's begin. I have written down here notations once again.
I have an announcement to make. The timetable will be put up for all the notice boards. Thanks.
Okay, so let's begin. Yesterday we defined, not yesterday, day before yesterday, we defined highest weight module, or what we call standard cyclic module. Cyclic module. So by definition it's L module V, which has maximal vector V plus of say weight lambda, such that this module V is isomorphic to UL V plus. Yeah, and then we wrote down several properties of this kind of module. So one more corollary to that proposition is we can say something when this module is irreducible. Corollary: if V is irreducible, standard cyclic module of weight lambda, of a fixed weight lambda, then it's unique up to isomorphism basically. It's unique. No, wait a minute. How do I want to phrase it? So V is not unique, but the V plus, the vector which generates that, is unique actually. Because obviously you can take quotient, and which will be again a highest weight module. So then V is irreducible standard cyclic module of weight lambda. Then the maximal vector, V plus is unique up to scalar multiplication. Yes. So suppose there was another maximal vector W plus. So proof. So suppose I have V plus, a maximal vector of weight lambda, and suppose I have another vector W plus, say again a maximal vector of weight lambda, then my claim is that they are scalar multiple of each other. So let's see why. So what I will do, I will look at the element say x plus, which is say V plus comma W plus. Okay. So V plus is a maximal vector of weight lambda, and W plus is a maximal vector of weight lambda. So then V is obviously isomorphic to UL V plus, and it's also isomorphic to UL W plus, right? But then what we do, we look at the element, somehow we have to prove that they are scalar multiple of each other. So we have to look at their corresponding weights So if I look at the weight of W plus with respect to this, then it has to be something less than equal to lambda. We calculated, right, in that was one of the proposition, that if I take any weight, then it is lambda minus some summation over some ki alpha I. And if I look at W plus here, then again it will tell me that it has to be less than equal to lambda dash, say suppose the lambda dash was here. So then that will give me, on one hand I will get lambda dash is less than equal to lambda, and on other hand if I compare this one with this one, then I will get lambda is less than lambda dash. Yeah. So this will give me actually lambda is lambda dash. But we know that the highest, if I look at the highest weight, one, there is the dimension is 1. So V plus and W plus both belong to that one dimensional space, V lambda. So that is just V lambda.
W prime is W plus the maximum vector of weight lambda prime. And the statement also.
So statement, what did I say?
The weight you have to remove.
No. So V0 decibel standard cyclic module of weight lambda. Yeah, it's fine. So V is a standard cyclic module of weight lambda. So by definition I have one V plus for that lambda. But my claim is that there is no other vector which can work for that. So say other vector W plus is of say weight, it could be of some lambda dash. But because of proposition that lambda dash has to be smaller anyway. But my claim is that if W plus generates again whole V, if that is UL times W plus again, then that W plus in some sense cannot be the maximal vector. Or the other way around, if it is again a maximal vector, then it has to be only scalar multiple of V plus. There is no choice.
The vector belongs to a maximal weight space.
If it is irreducible, then that's what we are saying, it's unique. If it is irreducible, then this will be equal to V. Otherwise this could have been some, you can take direct sum of two maximal weight also. Maximal weight, this standard cyclic module. Right, then the vector V plus and another V dash plus whatever, they may not have anything to do with each other.
I'm sorry, but by definition of maximal weight vector, the action of UL gives you all of them.
Yes. No, so say if I had direct sum, then I could have taken V plus comma W plus, so that will span the whole thing, right? That's a possibility. So still I can have one vector only the generating whole thing. But in the case of irreducible, that won't happen, so it has to be unique, the only scalar multiple of that element. Right, so we have defined what is standard cyclic module, but we have not said yet how to construct one such module. So what we are going to do, for any lambda in H star, we are going to construct, so we will denote it by Z lambda, standard cyclic module of weight lambda. So given any lambda, I will construct a standard cyclic module of weight lambda. In fact, we will actually construct an irreducible such module. But we know that once I construct this, the irreducible one I can obtain by just looking at the quotient of this. So that's not a big deal. We'll construct Z lambda and then we should be able to do this. And it will be unique in some sense. Given a lambda, it will be isomorphic. Anything here I construct, that will be isomorphic to that. So it's also unique. So let me write down the theorem and we'll try to prove this. So theorem, so first let's talk about uniqueness. So let V and W be standard cyclic module of weight lambda. both are of same highest weight lambda, and if V and W are irreducible, then they are isomorphic. So the next step will be to construct such a module. So first claim is that it's always unique in up to isomorphism. So let's prove this. So V and W both are standard cyclic module of weight lambda. So here V is isomorphic to UL times V plus, and W will be also isomorphic to UL times say vector W plus. So what I am going to do, I am going to look at the direct sum of these two modules, X, V direct sum W, and look at the vector X plus inside this, which is V plus comma W plus. V and W were irreducible here, they are going to be irreducible, but I don't know about X obviously, they are not, that's not irreducible. So so I will generate the some module inside VW by X plus. So look at that, call it Y. Y is submodule generated by X plus. So what I do now, I look at the projection map. So I have Y to X obviously map, and then from X to V and W we have this projection maps, and these maps are surjective. So I have V, which is some module generated by again element X plus. X plus is again highest weight because V plus is killed by L alpha, W plus is also killed by L alpha. So V plus comma W plus is also killed by L alpha. So X plus is going to be highest weight for this. So Y is again a standard cyclic module. Standard cyclic module. So Y is a standard cyclic module, and I have got its quotient V and W. Yeah, and they are irreducible. But the last thing in that proposition was that there is a unique irreducible quotient always. For a standard cyclic module, the quotient which is irreducible is always unique. So that will say that V is isomorphic to W. So proposition implies V is isomorphic to W. So now point is to construct such a module. Yeah, so look at the proposition again. In the proposition we said that if I have a standard cyclic module, then look at all possible quotients of that. There is unique irreducible quotient.
This is from what we did last time.
Yeah, that's like one of the property of standard cyclic module. But I have got two different things here as a quotient of Y, so they must be isomorphic. Unique maximal submodule and a unique irreducible quotient, hence unique irreducible quotient. Okay, let's try to construct such module. So there are two different constructions. One is based on the idea of induced module, which we do generally in group theory, representation theory, and another based on more like generators and relations, what we saw in the morning. So let's see both. Hopefully that will clarify what it is. So we are going to construction of standard cyclic modules. module of say weight lambda. So first we will fix lambda, and we are going to construct standard cyclic module with highest weight lambda, right? So fix lambda in H star. We are starting with lambda in H star. So the properties of standard cyclic module suggest there is always somewhat unique vector up to scalar multiplication. It's unique, the highest one. So let's fix a one-dimensional space, and we'll make it such a way that it will be the highest weight subspace. So let's fix V plus a vector and look at the subspace generated by that. Call it d lambda. So this is just one-dimensional subspace generated by a vector V plus. Yeah. Now I want to make it so the highest weight. Remember, I have to make act all elements from Borel. So I have to make act all L alpha, and I have to make act all elements of H. And L alpha should be acting as a 0, and H should be acting as some scalar, and that scalar should be given by this lambda. So I am going to make this one-dimensional subspace as a B module, and it's very easy to make it a B module. So we are going to make d lambda a B module. And how do we do that? So take any element of, so recall what was B? B is just H direct sum L alpha, alpha greater than 0, all the positive ones. So instead of writing greater than 0, I will follow my notation, alpha in phi plus. So take any element H plus summation over x alpha. I want to make it act on V plus. I am going to define this to be only H times V plus. So that will make sure that x alpha acts as 0, and that even this action H dot V plus, I will define it to be depending on this lambda. So this is going to be lambda of H V plus. So lambda of H is a scalar now. So this is just a action on one-dimensional space. I mean, you can write down individually. So write down that x alpha dot V is 0, and H dot V plus is lambda H V plus. Yeah, so this makes d lambda a B module. D lambda is just one-dimensional vector space right now. Is that clear? Okay. So now let's write it down the same thing in terms of universal enveloping algebra. So whenever I have a module, I can say that d lambda is a left UB module. Now in the usual sense, like UB will be just associative algebra. So that is, we have d lambda a left UB module. Yeah, that's clear. Now UB is usual associative algebra and its ring and all that. So I can try to make use of our idea from induced module idea from group theory. So I am going to define Z lambda to be UL tensor UB, no, UL tensor d lambda over UB So UL is definitely right UB module, so it makes sense to define this tensor product. Where? This here? Yeah, so I mean I have just written, instead of writing in 2 lines, I have written in 1 line. So x alpha v plus is 0, h on v plus is lambda h v plus. Where this?
So to check that this is an action, we have to check some of things.
It's one dimensional, so nothing much to check.
The question is why you reduce it, but you directly say y alpha on v plus is.
Oh, you mean why I am defining this?
Okay, that won't be a
This is one dimensional space, and which is left UB module, and it's only UB module. So I have to define something which is UL module.
Yeah, so I'm saying without doing this, you could directly try and say that
This.
y alpha of v plus is minus lambda h v plus.
So how do you define y alpha? You want to define action of y alpha on v plus. How do you define that?
And y alpha is a
But then you will be making only one dimensional space. I don't want to make one dimensional. So what I have got here is not one dimensional. This is not one dimensional. Because, okay, let's write it down. So UL over UB is again an algebra. What is the dimension of that? So UL is algebra which contains UB. So I had an UB module and then I tensor product with UL to get an UL module. That's the usual construction from construction of induced module. So that's what we have done. So what will be the basis of Z lambda? Let's write it down. So for that, I have to think of UL over UB.
So if we define y alpha, that will not become a module.
Sorry?
If we define action of y alpha on v plus equal to 0, that will not become a module because the bracket x alpha y alpha equal to h alpha.
Then H has to act by that scalar lambda.
Right side is 0, right hand is non-zero.
Right.
So only these two actions come back. They patch each other.
Yeah. So here I had d lambda, and I have taken here induced from UB to UL, which of course by definition UL tensor d lambda over UB, and then I make act UL on this part so that it's a left module. So that's how the left module it is. And now I want to see UL over UB. I want to find somewhat the basis of Z lambda. I mean, let's explore a little more. So for that, if I fix basis for L, and first I will write down the other elements and then I will write down the elements of B, so that the B is on the left side. Then what will be a basis for Z lambda? Say the elements are like Y alphas, H alpha and X alpha. This is the basis, this is how we write. So this part generates B. So the basis will be given by one tensor B plus, and then we have to take this Y alphas basically. So let's just write it y1, y2, so on. So it will be y I1 to the power say some j1 tensor with B plus. So this kind of elements will be there in the basis. So claim is that Z lambda is standard cyclic module of weight lambda. and that should be very clear with now looking at the basis. Maybe I shouldn't call it basis because I have not really checked it whether it's linearly independent. So definitely this is generating set for my module. Generating set. After all, I am constructing a module, so it doesn't make sense that I call it a basis. But this is now a standard cyclic module because we can calculate weight. So if you look at the one tensor V plus, the weight of one tensor V plus is exactly going to be lambda, because if you make it act by H, then you only act on V plus. So HV plus will give me lambda HV plus. That's the way it was defined. And if you want to act on this kind of elements, then again the similar calculation will give me that it's lambda minus JR times alpha IR, and then minus everything. So everything else has lower weight. And obviously I can rewrite this. So UL is also going to be UB minus tensor UB, rather B minus, I write N minus, this is not B minus, N minus. So I can make use again here, and then we'll get this module Z lambda is actually isomorphic to UN minus tensored with, so I am here instead of UL I am writing now UN minus tensor UB. So over UB you'll again get this just one dimensional whatever it is generated by V plus. So now you can clearly see that it's going to be a standard cyclic module. So I have constructed a standard cyclic module. So there is another way to construct this. So let's do the second construction. So second construction we make use of generators and relations. So the idea is that I have to go modulo the ideal generated by the elements, like X alpha has to kill that vector V plus, right? And then H has to act by scalar multiple. So I have to take some space in which I have to go modulo this. So take a free Lie algebra generate on that basis. So I have this basis elements Y alpha, H alpha and X alpha. Call this set X and look at the free Lie algebra on the set X and go modulo ideal generated by the elements X alpha and H alpha minus lambda of H times 1. And my claim is that this is isomorphic to Z lambda what we constructed just now. So that's again an exercise. So let's write down the main theorem. The main theorem is exactly this. Theorem, there is cyclic module of weight lambda. So let's prove this. So uniqueness we already proved earlier. now we have to find this irreducible standard cyclic module. So what we have constructed here, Z lambda need not be irreducible, but then what we are going to do, look at its unique irreducible quotient. So we'll define V lambda to be Z lambda mod Y lambda, where Y lambda is maximal submodule of Z lambda. So that's it. Yeah, Z lambda we constructed here. This is also isomorphic to Z lambda. So let's see whether we can prove that. So you can define a map from this fx free Lie algebra to Z lambda, because after all x is just a given set and this is a free Lie algebra. Use the universal property. So you can define a map from phi x, this fx to Z lambda, right? And then one has to check that these elements are in the kernel of that. So that will be done because how these elements act on here one tensor V plus, x alpha again acts as a 0, h alpha again acts as a scalar multiple. So this ideal is contained in the kernel of that map. And then look at apply PBW theorem and look at basis to say that it's isomorphism. So that will be an exercise maybe. We'll do this in tutorial session. So exercise. This is isomorphic to Z lambda. Okay, so right now what we have done, for any lambda in H star we have constructed a module, irreducible module. Yeah, so we have got huge number of irreducible modules because it depends on the number of elements in H star. H star is a vector space with basis as cardinality of simple roots basically. So I have constructed huge number of modules, but we don't know whether they are finite dimensional or infinite dimensional right now. So question is that which one of these here are finite dimensional and do we get all finite dimensional this way? So that's our next theorem. We'll classify finite dimensional among these, and in fact there will be all finite dimensional irreducible modules. So that's the next step we are going to do. Yeah, so one historical point that these Z lambdas are called Verma modules, whatever we constructed here. Okay, so let's go to the next step. So
Sorry, but these Z lambdas,
yeah,
thereby construction irreducible standard cyclic modules of Z lambda?
no, not Z lambdas, V lambdas. So I don't know Z lambdas are irreducible or not, but if they are not irreducible, look at the maximal submodule inside that.
Certainly cyclic.
They are definitely cyclic. So what we have constructed, they are standard cyclic right now, which is clear from looking at the generating set here. So this element is the highest weight and we also said that UL is just generated by one element. So it looks like that by definition of a standard cyclic module. It has to be some UL tensor something, one vector. Right. So first theorem, what we are going to do, that if I have any finite dimensional module, how it looks like. Does it belong to one of these here, correspond to some lambda? So let's write it down. This theorem, V is finite dimensional module, actually irreducible module, of say highest weight lambda,
So these V lambdas are one molecules.
sorry, z lambdas. Then these lambdas have a special property, that is lambda on every this basis element hi takes integer value, in fact non-negative integer, so belongs to z greater than equal to 0 for all I is between 1 to L. So if I have a finite dimensional irreducible L module of highest weight lambda, then it always corresponds to certain kind of lambda. So think of like my H star is basically f H1 star f HL star, right? And inside this we have smaller abelian subgroup is this. So for each element here we have constructed V lambdas, but if it is finite dimensional, so I am right now saying one way, if it is finite dimensional it has to correspond to lambda which is something here, not just here, in fact it should be even subset of this, which will be only z greater than equal to 0, H1 star and so on. Right? In fact converse is also true, so we will prove that. That is a longer proof that we will prove after this. So let us see proof of this. This is very simple. Again the ideas come from what we have been seeing in Upendra's lecture. We have to make it somehow look like SL2 module for certain submodule SL2, and then we know that we have classified already what are the irreducible SL2 module, or in general what are all SL2 modules, and there we saw that weights are always integers. So somehow that integer has to be reflected here. The highest weight is always positive integer. So that will give proof. So let's write it down. So what we are going to do, fix some alpha I and then look at x alpha I, y alpha I and hi, which is by definition a bracket of this x alpha I and y alpha I, and we have proved that this is isomorphic to SL2. Meaning you can start from any x alpha I and you can choose y alpha I such that this becomes SL2. Not any y alpha in L minus alpha will give probably this, but you can always make it look like SL2. Right? So I have a representation here of L. So I have this map L to GLV, and this, so let's give it a name. Call it S alpha I. This is what I have written notation there. So I have S alpha I, which is some Lie algebra which is isomorphic to SL2. It is subalgebra of L. It's generated by 3 elements inside L. So I have S alpha naturally here. So my module V is also S alpha I module now. I can compose it. So I get V as a representation of S alpha I, where S alpha I is isomorphic to SL2. Just remember. Yeah. So if I look at a vector here, weight vector, how does H act on that? H is here just HI. By SL2 theory, it will say that it will act by some integer. It's always going to be an integer. So say let's look at the highest weight lambda here. So we are talking about highest weight. So let's look at V lambda component in V. By SL2 theory, if I look at the element, so what is the total subalgebra here? It's generated by just this HI. So the HI action on any element of V lambda, HI action on this V is going to be, so by our usual definition it's going to be lambda of HI times V, but by SL2 theory it will say that this has to be integer, in fact positive integer, because whatever is highest weight for L, meaning it is killed by all X alpha I, so definitely it's killed by X alpha I also here. So if it is the highest weight for L, then it's highest weight for S alpha I also. So this has to be the highest weight for that, and the highest weight is always positive integer, some m. Remember the weights were like m, m minus 2, and decreasing it goes up to minus m. So it is lambda HI is going to be positive integer, and this you can do for any I. So that's easy proof. But the main theorem is that, the converse is also true. That's the main theorem. So let's before writing down main theorem, I will just define some terminology. So let's write down some definitions. So what is called abstract theory of weights? So the definitions has nothing to do with Lie algebra, it will just depend on the roots. So we already defined root system phi, which is subset of some Euclidean space E. And then with certain properties, right? So I'm not going to recall that. So phi is a root system. Then I define a set lambda. It's going to be elements of E such that if I calculate bracket of lambda with any alpha, this belongs to Z for all alpha in phi, where this bracket means 2 lambda alpha by alpha alpha. So remember this. So I am going to look at these vectors inside E. I am looking at reduced root system which come from Lie algebra. So there is also this integrality property that these lambda alphas are always integer if you take any root. So obviously all roots are contained in lambda. If I take any alpha, any other beta, then it's one of the definition of root system, one of the properties will say that beta alpha is always integer, right? So lambda contains phi. That's one thing. So definitely lambda is non-empty. So, and number 2, it's additive. It's additive because I have defined lambda here, I have taken lambda as first component. So it's supposed to be bilinear form but I am dividing, but the denominator is depending only on the second component. So it's definitely linear in lambda. So whenever lambda 1 and lambda 2 satisfy, then their sum again satisfies. In fact, integer multiple will also satisfy that. So it's a lattice actually. So lambda is a lattice in E. Because phi spans E, so phi contains some basis. In fact, you can take a delta simple roots, so it contains a basis, so it's definitely a lattice. So definition, lambda is called weight lattice. And elements of lambda are called weights. And lambda contains phi, so I can look at lattice generated by phi, or we can fix a simple roots. Let's fix the simple roots. So fix delta contained in phi and look at lattice generated by delta, so that is lambda r contained in lambda. So this lattice is called root lattice. Lambda r is this lattice generated by phi. Phi is contained in lambda, big lambda. It may not be equal. So look at the lattice generated by that. It's a sublattice in lambda. So this is called root lattice and lambda is called weight lattice. Sorry? Capital lambda is a lattice. Not here. Not just additive, I mean also lattice here which contains a basis. So I am little more strict.
Sorry, lambda r is the lattice generated by phi.
Phi.
So here it's not clear that
What?
there is no explicit basis.
For lambda. Yeah, I don't have right now explicit basis for lambda, but I want to write down one.
I'm sorry, what is delta?
Delta is simple root.
Huh?
Simple roots. So simple roots also have one property that they span whole space. So they are basis. So this is again another definition. This quotient lambda mod lambda r, this is called fundamental group. Of root system, in fact. It only depends on phi. And one can calculate this, and it's related to calculating Cartan matrix basically. It just depends on Cartan matrix. Okay, so it's not clear whether lambda has a, we are not given any explicit basis for lambda. So let's write down one explicit basis for lambda. Okay. So this is how we construct. So we have this simple roots alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha L. They are definitely a basis for E. So if I take another set which is 2 alpha I divided by alpha I, this is yet again a basis of E. I am just rescaling each vector. So what I am going to do, I am going to take a dual basis of this basis. So take lambda 1, lambda L, dual basis corresponding to this basis 2 alpha I divided by alpha I alpha I. That is, it satisfies lambda I. If I take one of this, then it has to be delta ij. If I take j term here, so lambda I, so I will take out other elements alpha j divided by alpha j 2. This will be equal to delta ij. This by definition, because lambda is supposed to be dual to this basis. So it's clearly you can see that this lambda i's belong to lambda. So actually, yeah, I mean, one needs to prove there little bit. It's just one line proof that to take elements in lambda is just in order to calculate lambda alpha for alpha in alpha simple roots. That is just in order to test here, that if I take lambda alpha in Z for alpha in simple roots. So once you check that, then it will be clear that this lambda i's again belong to lambda. So lambda I belong to lambda, and not just that, they actually generate whole lambda. So they are basis for lambda. Yeah, and once you show that any lambda can be written as some summation over mi lambda I with mi in Z, then elements of lambda with mi positive, non-negative, greater than or equal to 0, they are called okay. So this lambda i's are called, first of all, fundamental weights. So let's write down. So lambda I are called fundamental weight. Because any other weight can be written as linear combination of this, so integer combination of that. So it's a fundamental weight, and if lambda such that mi is greater than or equal to 0, this is called dominant. Look at, so you form a lattice basically, so like this, and then you want to take only those points of which coefficients are positive. So that is going to be dominant weight. I mean, any other point on the lattice is the usual element of weight lattice, but the dominant ones are those for which all coefficients are positive, for all I actually. So we'll make use of this, so that if you look at all dominant weights less than or equal to some fixed weight, it's always going to be finite, because it's after all counting lattice in a sphere or something, so it's finite. So we'll make use of this at some point of time. Okay, so you know our definitions. Let's go back to our representation theory. Lambda r is a root lattice.
Sitting inside this lattice.
Yeah. So one should do as an exercise, at least for 2 dimensions, write down lambda, weight lattice and root lattice. For 2-dimensional root system, we have classified all of them. try to write down root lattice and wet lattice. They are not always equal. Even for A2 they are not equal, so calculate at least for A2. You explicitly know the vectors, right? You explicitly know what is alpha 1 or alpha 2. Like for A2, so it's in 2 dimension, you have this. So it's basically hexagon, right? So these two form simple roots. And once you know the simple roots, you have to find dual basis this lambda 1, lambda 2. It will turn out that the dual basis is perpendicular to this and this one. So these two will be lambda 1, lambda 2. And there is span the lattice. So do it for all 2-dimensional cases at least. Okay, so let's go back to our
Lambda r is the lattice spanned by those two vectors.
lambda r is the lattice spanned by these roots. So these two are the simple roots. So they are bigger, they will be looking bigger here because they are contained in that lattice. So this lattice lambda will be smaller. So there are smaller vectors. Okay. Okay, so let's see what we have done so far and relate to it why we wrote down these general definitions. So what we have done so far, that for any lambda in H star, so remember, like whenever I have L, I have this Cartan decomposition H direct sum L alpha, where these alphas are in capital phi. Capital phi is subset of H star, right? So what we have done here is that for any lambda in H star, we have formed this V lambda, which is irreducible standard cyclic module. Of weight lambda. This is what we have done, and we have said that if this is finite, then this corresponds to lambda having values on each hi non-negative integers. This is what proved. So let's relate. So what is H star? H star is actually my space E. I mean, remember, like when we wrote down Cartan decomposition, so this was done in Upendra's class. We write down Cartan decomposition, and from that we find root system. So this H star is actually over a field F, but somehow you have to go to, first you have to go to rationals, and then from rational you tensor and go to real, and then you say that you actually got root system, and the inner product is the usual killing form, which you say that it's positive definite, and then finally over real you will come to the usual positive definite form. So that's how we obtain root system. So yeah, so this H star is just with the basis Hi star is over F. So first, what can we say about any weight? So if I have representation phi from L to GLV, and suppose mu is a weight, then what we do, we can think of V again as S alpha I module, right? Recall the way we did there. So V is again S alpha I module. So we make act Hi on V mu, and it will give me that mu of any hi is non-negative integer. And again by calculation in this decomposition, this was nothing but equal to mu alpha I, this product. And what we wrote down, Sripad wrote down this again in the morning. This is just this. So what we proved here, when if this module is finite, lambda hi is actually equal to lambda alpha I, and this being greater than equal to 0, meaning lambda is, look at the definition there, lambda is a weight, not just a weight, it's a dominant weight. That's what it translates to. So for every lambda in E, basically we have constructed a module in some sense, but among them only those modules are, finite one gave only dominant weights. So for every weight we have constructed actually a module in fact here. So let's write down the main theorem and we'll prove this. If lambda in H star is dominant integral weight, then the irreducible L module V, which is V lambda, is finite dimensional. And its set of weights phi lambda is permuted by while group with actually dimension of V mu equal to dimension of V sigma mu for sigma in W. This is the main theorem.
Sorry. But the first statement you proved, which was the converse of this, was not just about dominant weights, but just highest weight. Sorry.
No, we
highest
proved.
weight, not just a dominant weight.
No, we proved that a highest weight module, if it is of finite dimension, it's going to correspond to lambda, which is dominant integral weight. That's what we proved.
So the converse is not that it will be highest weight, but it's dominant weight.
So we are actually looking at this correspondence. So the correspondence is that lambda in H star and V lambda, which are irreducible highest weight module, standard cyclic module of weight lambda. So this is 1 So first thing I said that if this is finite here, one of the V lambda is finite, then here lambda must be dominant integral. Now I want to say other way around, if lambda is dominant integral, then V lambda should be finite dimensional.
I thought your theorem was V is finite dimensional. irreducible module of highest weight, then
Yeah, so in fact, any finite dimensional one we can think of always as some V lambda. Because if I have V, then I can always write it as a direct sum of weight spaces, V lambda. And then look at some non-zero one and apply all UL on that. And if you start with irreducible, then that has to be the whole thing.
There can be only one maximal weight.
If it is irreducible, there can be only one.
there will be many dominant weight groups,
Yeah, there will be many dominant.
but only one maximum.
No, each one will correspond to one. Once again, what is the question? If I have a dominant weight, I will get a module
V lambda.
with the highest weight lambda,
Oh, this lambda.
with that lambda which we started with. And for each lambda, I have different V lambda, irreducible ones. And more interesting is that, right now we are not stating here. I said that these weight lattice are generated by fundamental weights.
We don't need irreducible to prove that there is only unique maximum weight. Because it is true for standard cyclic module. So
It's not true for standard cyclic.
No.
You can take direct sum, right, always, of two irreducible ones. It's not true for standard cyclic that maximal weight is unique.
That should be less than lambda.
No, but two things may not be comparable even. You can take two such things, right? Two weights which are not comparable. Take direct sum of two V lambda dash and V lambda. Then the corresponding highest weight V plus and W plus. Just take that X plus. That will be still generating the whole thing. Yeah, so finally it comes down to finding, you can see that all weights are spanned by these fundamental weights. So you can only find that corresponding representation, fundamental representations, and rest you can obtain by taking tensor products and so on. So even you don't need to find all irreducible modules. It's enough to find the fundamental corresponding to fundamental weights. For example, okay, this is again an exercise. Let me write down exercise which will clarify what is going on. So there will be in exercise side, there will be exercise for SL2. All these things what we are doing will calculate for SL2. So for SL2, if you calculate this Z lambda, this will be in general infinite dimensional. So here you have only one dimension H star, right? H star is just spanned by 1. So the weight lattice is just somewhat like Z. So only integers, it will depend on only integers. So that's why the irreducible modules, if you look at that, their lambda is integer. The dimension at that lambda, they are just related by 1 plus 1. So Z lambda, if you construct in general, then obviously that will be not finite dimensional. But among them, which one will give you finite dimension will depend on lambda plus 1 being integer. So in general, lambda is an element of field. But if lambda plus 1 becomes integer, then this will correspond to finite dimensional, our usual representation. and the weight will be, there will be only one weight, fundamental weight, only one lambda. So you can actually take only one representation of SL2 and generate rest of them. So take only usual representation of SL2, the identity one. You can take all its symmetric power to get all irreducible one what you have written down. So that will be the exercise.
Direct sum can't be standard cyclic.
What?
Take two direct sum of two different standard cyclic modules.
Yeah.
Can't be standard cyclic.
Why? Think of the vector v plus comma w plus, and we also proved that it's always sum of weight spaces, so probably you will get, okay, we'll discuss about it. Okay, let's write down proof of this. So for proof of this I will need, so the proof of this will be in several steps, and before the proof I will need a lemma, which I am just writing down. It's a calculation in universal enveloping algebra, which will be, again I will leave it as an exercise. Okay, so fix generators of L as this y1, y2, yl and x1, x2, xl. So lemma, the following identities hold in UL So first identity is bracket of xj with yi to the power k plus 1 is 0 if I is not equal to j. B bracket of hj and yi to the power k plus 1 is minus k plus 1 alpha I of hj y to the power k plus 1 xi So this is very simple manipulation. You have to just prove this by induction. So for example, if you look at k equal to 1 or k equal to 0, these things are obvious identities. So you have to just use induction basically to prove this. We'll do this in exercise session. Okay, so let's prove this theorem. Proof will be again in several steps. So I have phi, which is representation of L to GLV, and fix this element V plus NV, which is maximal vector of weight lambda, and we'll also denote this mi for lambda of hi, and that is given to be positive integer. We have to prove V is finite dimensional. That is the thing.
We want to understand finite
Yes.
representations.
So the whole thing is to understand representations. So first thing is you want to know what are finite dimensional representations. Can you write them down? So this is the first step basically. So we are actually constructed finite dimensional modules. In fact, V lambdas are actually constructed.
Is it enough to understand the
And they are in 1-1 correspondence with lambda, the dominant integral weights.
and it's enough to understand the ones corresponding to fundamental weights.
Yes, because you can take some kind of symmetric and tensor and all that, and then they will give you,
You take sum of two dominant weights, you again get dominant weight.
yeah,
So what is the corresponding operation?
take direct sum
Then-
or take symmetric power, exterior powers, and then add them up to higher ones, right?
So basic, so the way this will be applied is to understand all the lambdas, you just understand the ones corresponding to lambda i's, and then we understand all finite dimensional.
Yeah, so in fact we are given for finite dimensional situation. So, but the main problem is so we obviously got some infinite dimensional also. The way we constructed finite dimensional one, we have got automatically some infinite dimensional. So then the modern question is more about concerned about like what happens for infinite dimensional modules. Finite dimensional is pretty understood generally. Okay, so we fix this notation. Mi is lambda hi, and they are given to be positive integers, non-negative integers, and ultimately we have to prove that it's a finite dimensional. So the way we are going to prove is that we are going to decompose V as first of all weight spaces, and then we'll define an action of while group on those weight spaces, and we'll say that there are only finitely many weights possible, and then they are permuted by action of while group, which is finite, so everything will be finite at the end. So that's the way we are going to proceed. So the first step of the proof is to write down action of mi plus 1. Notice mi is this mi times v plus, this is going to be 0. Okay. So how to prove this? You have to use these identities written here. So let me write it down quickly. So let's call this element w. So let's call w is yi to power this mi plus 1 times b plus, and we have to prove that w is 0. So first I am going to make use of the identity a. So if I make use of identity a, apply this on v plus. So I have xj yi to the power, instead of k I will take mi plus 1 acting on v plus is 0, and let's just expand this out. So I get xj yi to the power mi plus 1 v plus minus vi to the power mi plus 1 xj v plus, but v plus is maximal vector, so xj will kill this, so this part is 0. So what we prove that xj applied to, this is now w only, xj applied to w is 0, but this still doesn't say that w is 0. So now we have to see what xi does. So xi I will make use of this one, this part c. So again let's make use of that. So xi on yi mi plus 1 v plus. Now use part c. It will, if you use part c, then it will be yi to the power mi plus 1 xi v plus, which will be 0, and then v plus acted on this, but v plus acted on upon by hi is going to be give me mi, and this is also mi, so this will be also 0. So this will be again 0. So this is nothing but xi acting on w. So we proved that all xi acting on w give me 0, xi and xj also. So W is killed by all L alpha. Obviously, it's acted upon H by scalar multiplication. So it must be a maximal vector. But we have proved that if I have irreducible module, then maximal vector is unique. So it has unique up to scalar multiple. So W has to be scalar multiple of V plus. Oh, wait a minute. So W has to be scalar multiple of V plus. No, why is, then it is 0. So W has to be, so okay. So this implies W is a maximal vector. Right? But what is the weight of W? Weight of W is lambda minus something. So it's not in lambda. But the maximal vector has weight lambda only. There is only one up to scalar multiple. So that's a contradiction. So that's step 1. Step 2. So for all I between 1 to L, V contains a non-zero finite dimensional SI module. So fix any root. Look at the SL2 copy of that. There is always a finite dimensional that S alpha module sitting inside V. So I have to find out that inside V. So that's where we'll make use of this. So my claim is that if I look at the subspace generated by V plus yi V plus yi square V plus and so on up to yi to the power mi V plus, my claim is this is SI module. But SI is of course generated by, remember, X alpha I, Y alpha I and HI. So I have to show that this is invariant under the action of each of this. If I multiply by Y alpha I here, then I go up, and last one if I multiply by Y alpha I, then it becomes 0 because of step 1. So Y alpha I act. If I act by X alpha I, action of X alpha I on V plus will be 0. But if I want to make X alpha I act on this, then you have to use this relation. So it will be again in terms of the other ones. And the action of H is anyway, because the whole thing is these are all weight spaces. So action of H is anyway by scalar multiplication. So that's not a problem. So there is always a non-zero finite dimensional SI module. So that's step 2. Let's add on step 3. Claim is V is actually sum of finite dimensional all these SI modules. V is sum of, V is the sum of finite dimensional SI submodules. For all I, of course, you have to take for all I. So we know already for every SI there is a submodule. So you have to take direct sum and you have to prove that is equal to V. So let's take V dash is sum of such modules, and claim is that V dash is equal to V. So first of all, V dash is non-empty because of non-zero because of part 2. So you have to prove that it is invariant under all elements of L. So look at one S alpha module, say some W inside V dash. So W is some alpha module. make all x alpha act on W. All x alpha and y alpha act on W. So, but all the x alpha and y alphas are anyway finitely many. So the whole thing, whatever it gives, that is going to be finitely many, finite dimensional again, right? But that is L submodule, so that will be contained anyway in this V dash. That clear? So it is going to be sum of. So that whole thing will be L invariant then, and because it's irreducible, it has to be whole thing equal to that. My claim is that, so here I have just collected some of SI modules, right? And my claim is that is actually going to be L module. If I prove that this is an L module, V is irreducible, so it will become equal to V prime. V prime is not 0 already, not 0 because of this. So I have to prove that this is L invariant. So take one submodule from here, some SI module, make it act by all x alpha, y alpha and everything. There is still going to be finite dimensional. But it's sitting inside here only. So that will become L module, because if you want to act by any element of L, you already made it act. You have taken already that element.
So, I mean, one of these, suppose you take one of these summands corresponding to SI, how will the other xj's, yj's act?
Yeah, so I will take first one of this W, say for example. Now I will make all x alpha act on all these elements of W. I will construct this big one for all x alpha and y alpha, make it act. Still it will be finitely many only. This was finitely many, so this will be still finitely many, because the x alpha and y alpha are the basis of L, which is finite dimensional. We are starting with that. We are using that assumption here. But if I take all this and now I want to make some element of L act, that element is already in there somewhere. So, no, I want to make now invariant under L.
For taking some W, that is SI module.
Mm-hmm.
For taking all the units of the W under the text of
Yeah.
again SI module.
Yeah. So what I am doing by multiplying by x alpha and y alpha, I am making multiplying with all other SIs now. So in some sense, total combined is going to be L module. That's what I am doing by multiplying with all x alpha and y alpha, right? Okay, so next step 4. So for I in 1 to L, these elements phi xi and phi yi are locally nilpotent. On V. The part where it is contained, then phi xi restricted to that is usual nilpotent element in some sense. So now you are looking at only finite dimensional submodule. So what is the advantage of this? I want to construct an automorphism. So that is phi.
What's the action of the other?
Sorry.
Of the other, what is the action of phi xj on SI?
And which one? Part 3?
Part 4.
Yeah.
Phi xj, so when you go phi xj
Mm-hmm.
or phi yj, how does it act on the part of V, which is that SI module?
No. Here I have proved that V is sum of such things, but V is L module anyway, right? V is L module anyway. So phi xi will act. It's only that it was not finite. So what I have done in this step, that I have made it locally nice. Locally is going to be sum of SI modules, SL2 modules only. Finite dimensional SL2 modules, which we know how they look like. So whole thing V could be infinite, that we don't know yet.
Oh, but the SIs are finite in number.
SIs are just SL2 copies inside my Lie algebra L. So they are just as many in number as the roots basically.
That's right.
So they are anyway finitely many. So step 5. So now I have a nilpotent element here, locally nilpotent element. So I can take exponential of this, and it will be an automorphism for L. So then I can take this element SI, which is exponential of phi xi, exponential of phi minus yi, and exponential of phi xi. And this is an automorphism, and this whole calculation is happening only for in some sense SL2, because only I is involved. So one can calculate for SL2 what this element is. So claim is this SI is an automorphism. So this is clear because phi xi are nilpotent, so I can take exponential and they will give me automorphism. So step 6. So I want to look at action of Weyl group on the weights, as I said in the beginning. So if mu is any weight of V, then this action of SI on V mu is nothing but V of sigma I mu. SI V mu. SI is this element here I have constructed. SI is acting as an automorphism now on V. These are nilpotent elements, so I have taken exponential. So now they will become automorphism on V. So I am making it act on each weight space. The point is that it gives me first of all a weight space, and the weight space what it gives is exactly sigma I mu. Sigma I is the reflection, usual reflection in Weyl group. Weyl group is generated by simple reflections. So sigma I is that sigma alpha I basically. And the Weyl group acts on the root system, and so it acts on the root lattice and it also acts on the weight lattice. So you have this action there. Right. So here this one has to do only for SL2, and then for SL2 one can explicitly calculate what this is, because there are no matrices and everything. So it turns out that the weights, like the highest one will be exchanged to the the lowest one. It's subtracted, gets subtracted. So this one can do separate calculations. So let's leave this again as an exercise. I don't have much time. So do it for SL2 basically. So next step, the set of weights pi lambda is stable under W, and dimension of V mu is dimension of V sigma mu for all sigma in W and mu in pi lambda. this follows because any sigma in W is product of simple reflections. I don't know whether we proved that. I think we proved that already in the root system thing, that any element of W is product of simple reflections. I mean, the way it is defined is product of all reflections with respect to all roots, but one can prove further that it is just product of simple reflections. So then you use that. I already action of each reflection here. So it will say that weights are again a weight, so weight goes to a weight. So the if I take all of them, they are stable under W, and the dimension goes to, dimension is same because I actually said here that SI of V mu is equal to V sigma I mu. So this follows, 7 follows, and then from this you can say that, so this is the first point where you see that it's going to be finite. So this pi lambda is finite. The set of all weights are for this V is going to be finite. And why is that? Because you see here that the while group is acting on the weights, and weights, what we have seen in the beginning, that they were corresponding to the positive quadrant, basically dominant integral one. So the whole thing will be, so when you make a diagram, make a picture, then what happens that so suppose you have some picture of weight. Then if you want to make act by W, then W will make an orbit like this, maybe something like this, and then this or something like this. So it will make an orbit at the same distance because W does like that. So it will make only finitely many orbits. W is also finite and this is finite. So, and of course they have to be less than the maximal weight. So that's why the orbit is going to be only up to finitely many bounded. So it's just the point of counting integral points in a sphere, in the lattice points in the sphere. So that's why it's finite. So the important point was here that the while group acts on this weights, and these are weights for any module, only with the condition that lambda is dominant integral. So pi lambda is finite, and once pi lambda is finite, then now you know the dimension of V is finite, because corresponding to each weight V lambda is already shown to be finite. So its whole thing is finite. Dimension of V is finite. And that is because pi lambda is finite, and for any weight we have standard cyclic module. We had already proved that given a weight V mu is finite dimensional. Okay, I will stop here.